Walk with History today is doing the presidents buried at Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond, Virginia. Hollywood Cemetery is at 412 Cherry Street in Richmond, Virginia. It was built or started in 1847, and it's along the James River in the state capital here of Richmond, Virginia. 135 acres. This is a registered arborarium, which means the trees here have different species and they do their best to keep them up and have a place here for scientists or botanists to come look at the trees. Richmond, Virginia is the fourth most popular city in Virginia. It was founded in 1737. It was the capital in 1780 when Thomas Jefferson decided to move it from Williamsburg. And it was also the capital of the Confederacy when Jefferson Davis lived here. So here I am at President's Circle in Hollywood Cemetery. So we're gonna see the 5th president and the 10th president, President James Monroe and President John Tyler. Here we are, President's Circle in Hollywood Cemetery. And as you can see behind me is the kind of bird cage looking mausoleum. That is to the 5th president, James Monroe. That is his mausoleum. So we're gonna head over there and I'll talk more about it. I'm here with James Monroe, the 5th president of the United States. He was president from 1817 to 1825, and he was buried here actually 27 years after he had died. So he was originally buried in New York City, and then he was moved here in 1858, about 10 years after the museum opened, 11 years after the museum opened, and he is in what they call the bird cage. So this bird cage is built around his sarcophagus, and it's actually considered a national landmark. It's ornate, it's Gothic in style, it's cast iron, and again, his wife, who died in 1830, was moved here in 1903 to be with him. His daughter, his son-in-law are also buried beside him. He's the last president of the Virginia dynasty. The Monroe Doctrine is attributed to him because he opposed European colonialism and asserted U.S. dominance. He dies on July 4th, just like Thomas Jefferson and just like John Adams. He's the 3rd president to die on July 4th. He was an enslaver, but what most people don't know about Monroe is he was active in American Colonialization Society, which established free colonies for African Americans outside of the United States. And he took thousands of freed enslaved to Liberia from 1820 to 1840, and the capital, Monrovia of Liberia, is named after James Monroe. His son-in-law is actually one of the prosecutors of Aaron Burr in the Aaron Burr trial. Well, if it isn't Aaron Burr. I'm going to leave a flag here in honor of the 5th president of the United States. So I'm sitting here in front of John Tyler's grave, 10th president of the United States, from 1841 to 1845. He is the only president in history not to be officially recognized by Washington, D.C. when he died. And this is due to his allegiance to the Confederacy. So he dies in 1862, right in the middle of the Civil War, and he has put his support behind the Confederacy. So when he dies, he's not recognized by Washington, D.C. as he's considered a traitor. Tyler wanted his funeral to be simple, but Jefferson Davis made it a big event, and he draped the Confederate flag over his coffin. he's the first president to be elevated to president after the death of the president, and he was the vice president. He's vice president to William Henry Harrison, and William Henry Harrison, as we know, is only president for 31 days. He's the shortest serving president. 9th president of the United States dies of pneumonia. When he dies of pneumonia, John Tyler is his vice president, and he then takes over. So he's president for the next 4 years. John Tyler was born in 1790. He went to the College of William and Mary. He was governor of Virginia. His first wife dies of a stroke as he's president. So she's the first lady to pass away while she's first lady. And she not buried here with him, but he's buried with his second wife, who was 24 when he married her, and he was 54, and they got married in the White House. So she's the first lady to also get married to a sitting president. One of Tyler's grandsons is still alive today, and that's in tribute to, he married his second wife while she was very young. As president, he believed in manifest destiny. He was big into expanding the United States. So one of his things that he did was he signed Texas into statehood. So if you're a proud Texan, then you probably know who John Tyler is. Here's some children of President Tyler buried here. You got Julia and Pearl, and she's buried by his side under this monument. So him and his wife are both buried side by side under this monument. Davis Avenue in Hollywood Cemetery. So let's go find Jefferson Davis. Jefferson Davis is the president of the Confederate States from 1861 to 1865, part of the Democratic Party. He was a Mississippi senator, and he was also Secretary of War under the 14th president, Pierce, from 1853 to 1857. He went to West Point, and he fought in the Mexican-American War. He's the youngest of 10 children, and his wife, Verena, is buried here beside him. They had 6 children who, 2 of them made it to adulthood, and 1 of them had children. Their babies' remains are buried around them here. And when they were moved here, because in the beginning, Jefferson Davis was not buried here. Jefferson Davis was buried in New Orleans. But he's eventually reinterred here. And when he was reinterred here, they got the children's remains from Washington, D.C., Memphis, and one of their other children was buried here in Hollywood Cemetery in another location, and moved them here to be with the family. But Jefferson Davis is buried here beside his wife, and then his daughter is buried off over here with her husband. And then all of these little, like, cradle graves are the children that they lost in infancy buried around them. Most people feel Jefferson Davis had poor leadership. That's one of the reasons why the South was never successful. He's captured in 1865, tried for treason. Well, he's captured in 1865 for the charge of treason. Then he's put in Fort Norfolk for 2 years as a prisoner, but he's never tried for treason. He's released then. And then in 1880, he encourages reconciliation. He tells Southerners to be loyal to the Union. He has the largest funeral in the South. Again, he's buried in New Orleans in 1893. And then his widow, Verena, will request that he gets buried here in Hollywood Cemetery. And that's when all the remains of the children are also moved here to Hollywood Cemetery. What's interesting is Jefferson Davis is buried across from a Grant. It's not the Grant, but she's buried across from a Grant. So walking away from Jefferson Davis's grave, this is kind of like the far end of Hollywood Cemetery, you get this amazing view. There's Richmond, that's the James River, so it's just an amazing view. But my closing thoughts here, after seeing James Monroe, the 5th president, John Tyler, the 10th president, and then seeing Jefferson Davis here. Leaders, these people who have influenced America and how they've influenced America, how they're remembered, the choices they make, what they do and what we can learn from them. And that is the most important thing that we can gather from these people of history, is what we can take from what they have done, good decisions, bad decisions, the influence that we feel today, and what we can learn from them. So I hope you enjoyed this walk with history. I hope you learned something about the 5th president. I hope you learned something about the 10th president. I hope you learned something about Jefferson Davis. And if you're ever in Richmond, Virginia, I hope you visit Hollywood Cemetery. On to my next Walk with History.